title of the sermon, What is your testimony? What is your witness? What evidence have you got to produce? What do you have to say? Many thanks, Gina, for that song. And earlier on for reminding us to take our candle and go light in the world. In fact, as Christ put it, we are the candle. So take yourself and go light the world. In St. John chapter 5, Jesus came to the second year of his ministry. John, in writing about the life of Christ, presents a number of signs, evidences concerning the messiahship of Jesus Christ. And what we're dealing with here is about the third sign that he presents. But here in St. John chapter 5, we have Jesus at Bethsaida. He is an impotent man. As we go through the chapter, we see other themes developing. He healed the impotent man. There was opposition from the Jews. Christ defends his claim to be equal with God. Then he calls 4 witnesses to aid his defense. The word Bethsaida, the name Bethsaida, is a composite of 2 parts. And anytime you see a Hebrew word beginning with Beth, it means house of. So Bethsaida means house of mercy. Some commentators say it could also mean disgrace. A place of disgrace because it was people who were infirm and sick who were there, but a place of mercy because Christ provided healing for those who were infirm. Bethsaida, house of mercy. There are other words in the Bible beginning with Beth. Here are some of them. Bethel, house of God, place where God met with Jacob as he fled from his brother Esau, where he put his head down on a pillar of stone and saw a ladder between heaven and earth, and angels ascending and descending, and he called it Bethel. Then later on El Bethel, the God of the house of God. We have what at Bethlehem, house of bread. It's the same place where Naomi came from. It's interesting in a place named the house of bread. There was a famine that caused people to have to leave and go look for bread elsewhere. Very ironic. But Bethlehem means house of bread. Bethmina, house of the leopard. Bethaven, house east of Jordan. And you have others there. Bethaven, house of vanity. Beth-horon, house of holiness. Beth-arbel, house of God's ambush. House of ease. Bethany, house of dates, or house of misery. Bethpage, house of unripe figs. Bethsaida, house of fish. Bethshemesh, house of the sun. Christ met this impotent man at the house of mercy. It's a nice place to meet Christ. when you're in distress. And he healed the man. The man couldn't get into the pool at the appropriate time to receive healing. He explained that to Christ. Christ spoke to him, take up your bed and walk. It wasn't a four-poster bed. It wasn't a divan like you may have at home. It was just a mat rolled up on the floor. Christ said, take your bed up and walk. So he got up, took up his mat, and he's going. But the people saw him and they responded. They said to him, it is the Sabbath day. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed, your mat. It's illegal. It's against the regulations. He explained that the person who healed him told him to take up his bed and walk. So he just did what he was told by the man who healed him. After all, if someone has power to heal you, he must have some authority. So the people eventually found Jesus. Eventually. Christ explained himself in ways that offended them. He claimed equality with God. That's unknown as far as they were concerned. You born of Mary and Joseph, a mortal man, there is no way you can be equal with God. His claims offended their sensitivity. When he claimed to be equal with God. He also claimed to be equal in the knowledge that God had. What God knew, he knew. What he knew, God knew. They didn't like that. He claimed equality in 5 other areas. That God had given him power to resurrect the dead. He compounded his evil in their sight by saying that God has given him judgment, power to judge. Only God could do as far as they were concerned. He was equal in honor with God. He was equal in regenerating, and that the time has come when he's going to bring all people back to life. Not when the time comes, the time now is. He also claimed equal in self-existence. These qualities, as far as the folks were concerned, belong only to the Father. And now he, as far as they're concerned, a mere mortal man claimed that that's not right. So they responded. We are told in the Bible that, read that me please. Therefore,
the Jews sought the more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but set also in the law of his father, beginning himself equal with God.
Let me tell you something, brother. God is quite capable of defending himself. Don't try to commit murder to protect God. God is quite able and quite capable of defending himself. Too many people these days are committing evil, committing murder, saying that they are protecting God's honor. God is quite capable of defending his honor. And those who dishonor him will pay. Make no bones about it. Don't sin your soul by trying to protect God's honor. But by all means, honor God in what you do. Killing others because you perceive them to dishonor God is not honoring God. It's compounding the dishonor of God. They sought him more to kill him. They were trying to kill him before. But because of him claiming God with God, they sought more to kill him. Because number one, he broke the Sabbath. He gave permission for man to carry his mat. And number two, he came to be equal with God. How did Christ respond? Read that for me, please. I can. Look at that. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. Why would Christ say that? After all, he's God. So why would he say that? I'll tell you why. Because the Old Testament made it quite clear that nothing is established except before 2 or 3 witnesses. And Christ was acting and speaking in sync with what he had given in the Old Testament to the prophets. We have another way of saying it in English. Self-praise is no recommendation. So when you apply for a job, you may speak highly of yourself, but they will still ask you for 2 or 3 references. Because something must be established before 2 or 3 witnesses. And you will look for somebody whose word you know will be trusted. You won't ask a criminal to give you a reference, because a known criminal is not a trustworthy person. Sometimes you ask the pastor to give you a reference, because you know that when it comes to signing passport, etc., the government will take the word of a minister of religion. But don't put your pastor in a position to tell lies. If you know you don't discharge your duty, you don't behave well, you have a bad reputation, you tell lies, don't ask your pastor to give you a reference. Spare him the humiliation, please. Because you must bear a true testimony. Christ called 4 witnesses to bear testimony. And he called them because he knew that their testimony, their witness, is true. 4 witnesses. There was the witness of John the Baptist. St. John chapter 5, verse 32-35. Christ called him because he knew that his witness was true. In fact, Christ said of John that of those born of women, those naturally born, there was none greater than John. Hold on. David, Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. Of those born of women, there was none greater than John. That's some witness. Then they have the witness of his works, the things he did. We're going to come back to these. He called upon his Father. He also called the witness stand the Old Testament scriptures. Let's look at these. John's testimony. Read that for me, please. John's testimony. I saw the Spirit descending on him as an evidence to me, and I bear witness. I go on record, he said. I go on record. This is the Son of God. That's John's testimony. What's your testimony? He continued further. Jesus now calls his works, the things he did. You see, John had sent to ask him, art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? Hold on. The same John that said, I go on record, and I bear record. This is the Son of God. Now he is asking, because he's in prison. He's languishing. He didn't expect this. He thought, when they're going to be freed from Roman domination. They're going to be elevated again. But the Messiah has come. I'm in prison languishing. This doesn't seem to be playing out as I expected. Are you the one? Are you really the one that should come? Or do we look for another? He sent messengers to ask. I am beginning to have doubts. It is not unusual for those called of God to be in that position. Elijah, the prophet, a great victory at Mount Carmel, the priests of Baal destroyed. God shown to be the true God. Answered by fire, fire eat up the altar, eat up the water. But now he is despondent. Lord, take my life. Because they're seeking to destroy their people and I'm the only one left. God said, no, you got it wrong. I've got many more besides you. Just because you're on your own and feeling low, don't think that things are as you see. If I may borrow an expression from the commercial, there are times when us Christians need to go to Specsavers. Sometimes we don't see things as God sees them. Because of our immediate circumstance, we feel low, we are depressed, we are despondent, bills are not paid, people are speaking bad about us, and we feel rather down. But look up. Look up. Don't be swayed by your feelings. Read after me, please, from the beginning. And said to him, Jesus answered, said to him, go and show all the appearance of the blind receive the sight, and the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he, whosoever shall not be offended in me. In other words, to the messengers, John's ambassadors, look around. See what I'm doing. Is there anyone else doing these things? Report to John. Tell him what you see. The things I do are evidence in themselves. The blind receive their sight. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The deaf can hear. The dead are raised. The poor have the gospel preached to them. Go back and tell John these things. That will be evidence enough for him to know that I am the one. There is no more to come. The things I do bear witness. That's my testimony. What's your testimony? Then we have the testimony of the scriptures. Jesus called the scriptures to testify concerning him. He already called John the Baptist, the person God sent to identify Christ. He called his works to the witness stand. Now he's calling the scriptures to the witness stand. In Genesis, you have Christ presented as the seed of the woman. He is also typified in the life of many characters mentioned in the book of Genesis. In Exodus, he is the Passover lamb. He is the manna from heaven. Paul says your forefathers ate the food in the wilderness, and that food was Christ. They drank from that rock was Christ. In Exodus, he is the Passover lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. And he's also typified by other characters in the book of Exodus. In Leviticus, he's the high priest. He's also the whole sacrificial system because the lamb represented Christ. All the offerings pointed to Christ. The high priest ministered, he was Christ. Do what Christ is doing in the sanctuary for us right now. In Numbers is the cloud and the fire. The cloud that followed by day provided shade, the fire that gave light and protection at night. He was also watered from the rock that was struck. In Deuteronomy, he's a prophet like Moses. God promised, I'll raise up a prophet like you. We're going to come back to that. In Joshua, he's the captain of all salvation. And the word Jesus in the New Testament is Joshua in the Old Testament. Yeshua is the captain of all salvation. In Genesis, he's presented as a judge and a lawgiver. In Ruth, he's the kinsman redeemer. In 1st and 2nd Samuel, he's the prophet of the Lord. In the Kings and the Chronicles, he's the reigning king. Typified also by Solomon's temple. In Ezra, he's a faithful scribe. In Nehemiah, he's rebuilder of the walls. Typified in the life of Nehemiah. In Esther, he is typified by Monica. In Job, he's a dayspring from on high. In Psalm, he's the Lord is our shepherd. My wife likes to listen to classical psalms on the iPad. The trouble this morning, we're playing Psalms 76, 77, 78. It's amazing even there how often the theme of the shepherd comes up. God is our shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In the psalm, he is portrayed as a shepherd. Ecclesiastes is the wisdom of God. In Song of Solomon, he's the lover and the bridegroom. In Isaiah, he's the suffering servant. Pierced for transgression, wounded for transgression, pierced for iniquities. Chastisement of our peace is upon him, with his stripes we are healed. The suffering servant. In Jeremiah, Lamentation is the weeping prophet. In Ezekiel, he's the Son of Man. In Daniel, he's the Son of Man coming in the clouds. In Hosea, he's the bridegroom. In Joel, the baptizer with the Holy Spirit. In Genesis, Amos, he's the burden bearer. Obadiah, the mighty Savior. Jonah, the forgiving God. Micah, the messenger with beautiful feet. Nahum, the avenger of God's elect. Habakkuk, the great evangelist crying for revival. In Zephaniah, he's the restorer of the remnant. In Haggai, the cleansing the fountain. In Zechariah, he's the pierced son. And in Malachi, he's the son of righteousness. You find him typified, referred to, prophesied about, illustrated in all the books of the Old Testament. He is there. So Christ wasn't whistling in the wind when he called the scriptures to bear witness about him. In Luke 24:27, he met two gentlemen walking away from Jerusalem, and they were heading to Emmaus. One of them was Cleophas. And he joined them. And if anybody used to his parlance, you say, what's going on? But to them he says, why are you so downcast? What has happened? Are you straight to Jerusalem? This is front page news. And you ask what's going on? Where have you been? Have you heard about the Messiah called? And we had hoped that he would have been the one to deliver Israel. Then we are told, he began to speak to them. Oh, slow of heart and foolish. Wasn't Christ supposed to suffer all these things? And then we are told, beginning at Moses and all the prophets. That's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 5 books of Moses, and all the prophets, the rest of the Old Testament. He expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. The scriptures they had then was the Old Testament. And he expounded them all the things concerning himself. How could he do that? Because all the Old Testament spoke about Jesus Christ. Basically, you don't need the New Testament to speak about Christ. Later on, Cleophas and his companion had met the disciples and had told them, he's alive. And then Christ appeared to them. And we're told he spoke unto them. And he said to them in part, read me please, these are the words. Where were those things written? In Moses, in the law of Moses. That's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. In the prophets, the prophetic books of the Old Testament. And in the Psalms, the writings, the literature of the Old Testament. The Psalms and the Jews class Daniel in that same category. Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, and Job. The class was in that category, the writings. So you have the law of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. It was there from the Old Testament scriptures. He spoke them regarding himself. The Old Testament testifies about Jesus Christ. What's your testament? In Luke 24, 46 to 48, we have here these words. Thus it is written, and thus it behoved Christ to suffer, and to rise from the dead the third day, and that repentance and remission of sins should be preached in his name among some nations. Among all nations. Beginning where? But should it stay there? No, because in the same chapter, in the same epistle, we are in the same in the same gospel, we are told that they want to tarry in Jerusalem until power is come upon them, but then they want to take the gospel to Judea and Samaria and the uttermost part of the earth. So begin there, but don't stay there. That's why the commission is still with us, including the cities. And whether or not there was a special emphasis on mission to the cities, we are still obligated because of this commission to take the gospel to the cities and the villages and the streets and the town. Christ could call when he was challenged. He can call John the Baptist, He can call his Father, he can call his works, he can call the scriptures to testify about him. He is still being challenged today. He is still being challenged today. Some say he was just a prophet, not the Son of God. Some say he was a revolutionary. That's what the Romans got rid of him. He wasn't any religious figure that come afterwards. He is still being challenged today. Each man must bear their own sin. One man can't die for another. He is still being challenged today. How would you defend him? What's your testimony? What would you say to defend Christ? Because he's challenged today, he's calling on us today to stand up and be complete for him. Peter had a testimony. Christ, we are told, came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist. We know he wasn't. But that's what they were saying then. Others say Elijah. Still others Jeremiah. Or one of the prophets. Because alright, that's what they say. You've been walking enough for nearly 3 years. What do you say? Who do you say I am? Peter said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Or you are the Christ, the anointed one, the Son of the living God. What's your testimony? Just about the greatest miracle that could be performed is to change one from a sinner to a saint. From an abuser to a respected person. From a child of the devil to a child of God. What's your testimony? How would you speak up for Jesus Christ? Later on, Peter, when he was challenged, he said, I know him not. Yes, you've been with him. And Peter swore, in his fisherman's language, I tell you, I don't know him. But he was concerned about his life and his safety at that time and about Christ's honor. What's your testimony when the chips are down? When you seem to be in danger, you might lose a job or lose a few pennies if you don't work on Sabbath. What's your testimony? Because at that time it's not easy. It's hard. What's your testimony when you think others disrespect you? Do you give them peace of your mind and lose your own soul? What's your testimony? You are the Messiah, Son of the living God, but don't forget that when chips are down. Peter's testimony changed later on. Thank God. Read this with me, please. This is the literally, they took knowledge of them that they were Christ's followers and that they were the ones who were with him for 3.5 years. But there's an application here. You can only behave like Christ if you spend time with Christ. And when the chips are down, and we got to stand up and come to people ought to be able to take note of us. That's a person who walks with Jesus Christ. My response ought to be able to say, that's a person who walks with Jesus Christ. They took knowledge of them, they had been with Christ. So how is your devotion? What would be your testimony when you're brought into strange circumstances and you must stand up for your faith? Now when you saw the boldness of Peter and John, Peter was no longer timid. He didn't follow far off. He didn't see the right in a corner when others fled. On this occasion, they were bold. And people could see from their boldness and their response they have been with Jesus, because they recognized and they said, there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved from walking in sorrow. Whereby we must be saved from losing our job. Whereby we must be saved from the trickery of the devil. Whereby we must be saved from being led along false path. There is no other name. And God will not take us where He can stand with us and deliver us, even if it means bringing the lions there. If it means being in the lake of fire, He can stand there with us and He can deliver us. But we got to be willing to say, like the three Hebrew boys, our God is able, but if He choose not, we are ready to die. It may not suit His purpose, His honor, and His glory at this point in time. So if it doesn't suit His purpose, we are willing to fit in His purpose. We still won't bow down and worship the golden image. Bring on the fire. What's your testimony? Paul, who used to persecute the Christians, now standing with the Christian and a proponent of the Christian gospel, he said, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. Continue. That's Paul's testimony. What's your testimony? I believe your Old Testament ought to be what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 3:1-3. We are called to be epistles of Christ, living epistles if you please, known and read of all men. When folks read our lives, our conduct, our behavior, our responses, they ought to be able to say, there goes one who has been with Jesus. When Christ is challenged today, he ought to be able to say, have you considered my servant Job? There's none like him in all the earth. Okay, let me get my hands on him. Okay, go do your worst. In all of this, Job sinned not. Neither did he charge God foolishly. When his friends came to be with him when they saw his distress, for a number of days they sat there. He didn't say a word, because word was useless. As soon as they opened their mouth, they began to compound Job's trouble. At the end, God said to them, go talk to Job. You have spoken foolishly. Go talk to Job. Let him pray for you. They had come to console Job. But Job was praying for their salvation. can Jesus say, I call to the witness stand Frederick Mapp, or whatever your name is. What kind of testimony would you give to the one who's been charged officially because men don't know better? God expects you and I to stand up as witnesses for Christ and give a testimony that defends Christ's name, that defends his activity among men today. A testimony that says, this is the Christ. He has worked in me, and because of what he's done in me, I'm no longer what I am, what I used to be. Maybe not all that I want to be, but I'm no longer what I used to be. And by the grace of God, when it's finished with me, I will be what I ought to be. May God bless your testimony. Our Father, and our God, as you work in us, grant us the boldness of Peter and the commitment of Paul to say with them,